Hey, everybody. Hopefully you're doing well. Thanks for coming on by today. We are back at it here. The timer is officially done, so let's get after it. Hopefully you're doing well. Thanks for stopping on by. Always a pleasure to see you. It has been a full week so far, although not as crazy as other weeks have been. And so I'm thankful that it's just kind of been going along as planned and getting the work done and looking forward to the weekend. So hopefully you are in the same boat. Thank you so much for joining us. Angus, good morning, sir. Thanks for coming along for the ride today. As you maybe have noticed from the title that went up over a week ago, there's a new piece of software that's been announced for the NDI world, and it's starting out as an NDI bit, but they're going to be kind of rolling out other protocols in the future, according to the announcement show that I watched a couple of weeks ago. And so I just wanted to kind of go over the website and let everybody kind of know what is coming up. I think it's actually very exciting to see, what people are dreaming up. But essentially, these guys have been working with VizRT and various NDI companies to kind of make it all happen. And so I'm happy about that. I think it's a real right move in the right direction, because NDI monitoring has always been kind of this like weird world where you can check your network but kind of momentarily, and there's really been no way to stress test, or there's been no way to really find out exactly how well your network is performing. And as I have always said, and now I can freely say, I think NDI did themselves a real disservice by saying it'll just work on any network, because technically that's true, but I don't think that customers want to hear technically that's true. I think they want to hear for certain these are the true facts. And so when you get into this game of telling half-truths or telling, it is true, like, for example, a product is for sale, you're just not going to get it when you buy it. That's not what for sale means. What for sale means is I can buy it now and they'll ship it to me. So when you do these sort of half-truth things, and I think NDI made a fundamental mistake when it first started, and I understand why they maybe did it, just to, get the protocol out there and to really make it seem legit. But I think they shot themselves in the foot in the long term, because, it does work on any network, but not any network. So you really have to do some wordsmithing to believe that. And unfortunately, non-IT broadcast people bought it. They thought, yep, that's the truth. And why would they tell us, why would they say it works on any network when it doesn't? So I'm in for the first half hour. Awesome. Show starts soon. That's good luck today on your show. I really always thankful that you jump in here when you can. So NDI does work on an empty network. It's very true. Yes, it does work on an empty network. For the most part, I mean, I've seen networks that are empty that it still doesn't work on. But they didn't want to sell a product that was like 2110, because 2110 required a lot of investment on the network side in order to get it to work. And so they wanted this to basically be, it just works, just plug it in, it's plug and play, these sort of cliche words that were thrown around for far too long. And to be frank, I had some very, behind closed doors discussions, very honest discussions, we'll say, about how untruthful that was and how we're setting ourselves up to make the customers very unhappy. And so we tried to weed out a bunch of those words, because anytime you hear somebody that just says, oh, NDI's plug and play, they have not serviced a long-term NDI network. It is plug and play if you just want to unbox it and see a picture. But if you want to put it in an infrastructure, you need to know something about networking, and you don't need to be certified. I mean, that's a funny phrase. You don't need to be network certified in order to understand how to get it to work, but you definitely shouldn't be clueless, because the thing that you're relying on getting the signal across to you is the network. And so you should know something about it and how it's deployed and what its limitations are and what its speeds are and where its bottlenecks are. And better yet, you should put it together so that you know from a fundamental standpoint how it's done. So, we went round and round for a long time about word usage and NDI back in the early days. We definitely, I was at BirdDog for about a year, and then I said, look, we need to stop saying some of these words because people are getting the impression that they don't need to invest anything in their network. And, like we had these discussions, for example, when the Play launched, about how many plays can be used on a network and what sort of network needs to be used to run BirdDog Play. And I was advocating, look, if you're expanding a bunch of units to talk on a network, you need to understand multicast, and you need to deploy multicast correctly onto switches that can handle multicast. And it was, no, that's going to scare away customers. And I thought, but people are not buying these as, like, some people buy one or two of them for their church lobby. A lot of integrators were buying 50, 60, 100 units at a time. And among other problems we were having with the Play when it first launched, they need to know how the network needs to be set up in order to get 100 NDI signals to work. And we're already talking about multicast. And so when I would say that, they say, well, if they're buying 100, then they know about multicast. I'm like, no, not necessarily. Matter of fact, we're finding out the marketing doesn't say anything about multicast. The marketing just says plug it in. It's plug and play. That's what it says. So it blew my mind that those were the type of conversations we were having. But the network is a big deal. My NDI network is 100% dedicated to this perfect. There's no other traffic, which ends up being where a lot of people go, Angus. Like, a lot of people end up being like, look, we'll just buy our own switches. We'll just put our own VLAN on. We'll just do our own thing so that NDI will work correctly. And that's fine. That's great how that's been done. But early in the early days of NDI, there were the idealists who would say, no, it just works on any network. And then there were the people that were supporting those installations saying, this isn't working on any network. Matter of fact, they actually need to have a pretty good network, and it needs to be well mapped out and well planned in order for it to work. And then there was this gray space from, like, is the manufacturer on the hook for telling the customer that information, or is the customer on the hook for knowing that information? And I always felt like my support guys were always in the middle of that conversation because everybody was pointing fingers at each other. And that is part of the reason why the BirdDog John show was weekly, twice a week actually, because we were fielding a lot of comments where people were feeling, first of all, frustrated that they weren't able to just call a number and hold us on the phone for 3 hours. And I pushed against having a phone number, honestly, at the BirdDog office, because when I would get on the phone with integrators who didn't know what they were doing, it would be all day. I would get nothing else done. And I had hundreds of tickets that we needed to address, and I would spend all day working on one. And so I was like, look, we're not doing the phone stuff because we don't have the resources to run a phone center. And, that was frowned upon by integrators and by my owners, just because, no, they need to be able to get a hold of you as fast as possible any way they deem appropriate. And I was saying, look, we have to control the traffic coming into support because we're drinking from the fire hose all the time. And it's out of control. And so I'm not opening up every single fire hose just to drown my team because they'll all quit on me. And we're not doing that. So it became this weird thing of, like, it works anywhere. And then, like, no, you need an NDI network. And then somehow, by the grace of the powers that be, Netgear came out and said, we've made a specific AV NDI protocol. And that was my linchpin for being like, if NDI didn't require a specific level of horsepower, Netgear would not have a leg to stand on to sell their 4250 product line. Like, that is the indication, everybody, that NDI needs something. It's not just the $40 router switch that you get at Best Buy from Linksys, It was beautiful. It was beautiful that happened, because that meant that the idea that it just works on any network was dead. And the people who were selling NDI, the marketing team that was selling NDI, were not particularly happy about that because it meant that they couldn't just sell to anyone and everyone. It meant that we had to have a conversation of, okay, is your network up to snuff to make this actually work? We're talking about high performance NDI. Just like any job can be great if you don't have to deal with any customers. I designed a 3D printed a little hat for an unmanaged PoE switch. So, there you go. It has PoE to USB power converter inside, powering a little GL-iNet travel router to act as our DHCP server. Oh, wow. It goes out. Oh, sorry. It goes out with any of my AV LANs camera packages, all DHCP, NDI, and a nice little controller. See, anyway, to me, that's a clear indication. Like, if you get integrators like Angus and guys that are pulling off doing shows over NDI, we should be talking to them. We should be saying, okay, but like, you're a run and gun. What do you use? And find out what actually works on a regular basis, and then start that as a baseline. The setup and takedown guys should be the baseline for all NDI network stuff, because that's like the minimum, is what I mean, is at least do that much. And if you want it to go better than that, then do that, do more and invest in 4250s or invest in 4300s or whatever. I think there's a 4350 line out now. I haven't seen it, but I think there is. I have a 4250 quietly running in my server rack, which is just behind me here. And it is handling all of that traffic and functioning as an independent NDI network VLAN controller. So it's pretty sweet. And I set it up. I had about a week's worth of customization problems that I had to iron out, and knock on wood. Oh, here we go. Knock on wood. There haven't been any NDI packet problems since then. There's issues with the computer I'm using, and there's issues with the camera I'm using, and a few other things, but NDI packets getting across my network, no issues. So, and I guess it sent me a photo in LinkedIn. So let's have a quick little peek over there at LinkedIn. Alrighty. Ooh, that's so fancy. So this is Angus's little hat for his Netgear. I actually think, the 108, I actually have this switch downstairs doing my general network traffic. That is, hang on here, I'll do overlays so that we can share this together. I have my my general house traffic on that switch. I'm not saying don't use unmanaged switches, everybody. I'm just saying don't use it for your high-performance video network. That's all. And people get very upset. What do you mean my $60 Netgear switches or $110 Netgear switch isn't going to do it? It's like, well, sorry, but that's just not how this works. And I appreciate that you spend $100 on a switch, but it's good for home network. I play Nintendo Wii and Switch games off of this thing. Okay, it is, for example, the switch that my hardline. So I physically run a cable down to this switch so that it goes out to Starlink. That's fine, but it's only 3 megs. It's not NDI that's like compiling megs on top of megs, and then depending on how many times you're viewing it, adds to it, which is part of today's conversation, by the way, because we want to go down. I've been ranting about. Thanks, Angus. This is really cool that you sent me this picture. I've been ranting about networks and managing NDI networks, and how in the early days there was really no way to know, because and to set it up, let's do it this way. NDI is a constant stream of data. Okay, it's constantly moving. If video like this, you can't buffer this. It has to go in, it gets converted to NDI, and it gets sent across to my computer, and those packets are being read and looked at in real time. Matter of fact, so fast that we can do live video with very little delay on the video on the actual stream. So we're sending constant video. Well, when we want to check and see if a network can handle it, we would need to send constant videos across. And my pitch back in my Bird Dog days was, look, we're not doing traditional network data. We're sending video data. Traditional network data is we have a packet of information. I want to send a file from my computer to your computer. We're both on the same network. I copy and paste it over the network to you. It loads and it starts sending it across, and then it finishes, and then you double click on the file and you see it. That is not video data. Video data is I turn on the faucet and it starts going, and it's your responsibility to catch the water and drink it as fast as it's coming. And if you can't keep up, you're going to have to what? You're going to have to put those packets somewhere. And so you're either going to drop them, or you're going to dump them, or pour them down the drain, or whatever. And you're going to get frame drops. So it's two different styles of data. Regular data on a network, that's even YouTube and whatever, there's buffering. It lets you load parts of the video and then it plays it in 4K, which is astounding, by the way. But you're not streaming that live. When you're streaming live, that data is coming in full on. Now, even live streaming to YouTube, however you're watching this today, there is a buffer built into YouTube so that it collects all the packets. And so if for 5 seconds my computer has trouble or stops sending packets, the packets are already there in front to allow for time to catch up. And so you don't get too many stutters, you don't get too many freeze frames unless I have a serious network issue or we change satellites or something like that. Now, there's an AT&T fiber that was just buried along the road here. So one of these days we're going to get fiber internet over here. And I'll have to bid adieu to my Starlink days until, of course, I change it to a roaming plan and I take it on the road with me when I go to Canada. All right. All that aside, we build in buffering even when we're doing live streams. So when you're watching this, there's a buffer involved. It's actually happening in a delay. So the things I'm saying now, you're not hearing for a few seconds, which is why a live chat coming back to me usually ends up being a little bit delayed because there's a delay. When we're doing video on our network and it's all coming into vMix or TriCaster or something like that, that's all instantaneous. There's very low latency, something like that, especially in full NDI. But now with HX3, the bit rate is substantially lower, but the quality is still extremely high, which is very cool. So I think the full NDI, full fat NDI days are numbered, to be quite honest with you. It's just my opinion because I don't see any logical reason for using the network in that way to deliver the same product. I would always go hands down the lower bit rate if the quality is the same. However, it wasn't the case with HX2, but it is the case with HX3. So as we're sending data across, it's a constant bit rate. It's constantly coming across the wire. Things have to be constantly reading in real time. And the switch has to have enough horsepower. Yes, that's a thing. Has to have enough horsepower on board to process the data and get it to your computer. And so if you're doing multiple streams of NDI, then you need to also be able to process that information and get it across. Now, fun fact, there is not a piece of software out there that generates, there's not a piece of software that's built on the NDI SDK that is not full fat. Okay, so the output, for example, of vMix is full NDI. So I'm watching it on a secondary computer, which is being shown on my confidence monitor. And so I'm seeing the output of vMix on this confidence monitor, which is a little 17-incher. And it is showing me the full NDI signal. Because, as I understand it, VizRT or NDI hasn't released well, that's not true. There isn't really a way to do the HX encode in software. It can only be done on a chipset, I think. I think that's how that goes. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. But there isn't a software that encodes like vMix that encodes it as an HX signal. Now, NDI has a little program that will transcode either full NDI to HX or will regenerate streams, for example, which is called, what is it called? What's that little program called? NDI. Here we go. Sorry. I used to remember, but Bridge, NDI Bridge. And Bridge gives you the ability to do a bunch of things. You can bring outside sources onto your network, kind of like Bird Dog Cloud is, but I haven't done a lot of rigorous testing. I know that it's not quite the same as Bird Cloud, and Cloud allows for some other options as well. Although Bird Cloud has been very quiet in the public sphere as of recent. Okay, so there isn't really software that's done by third parties that allows for NDI HX to get to be used. And so Chad here makes an observation. Well, there's a tool called NDI Tools Screen Share HX, which is how I am sharing this screen, but that's made by NDI. And so is Bridge. Bridge is made by NDI. But the SDK that is given to outside companies does not allow for HX streams to be encoded. And so it's all full, which is weird because it kind of puts some things in like weird corners when it comes to integration. Okay, so for example, a decoder that only decodes HX can't decode vMix output directly. It has to go through NDI Bridge. So it's a strange problem to have, but it's the real deal. Right click on the screen sharing tool and you can choose between HX and full. Yeah. Again, though, this is from NDI Tools. That's from NDI. That's not an outside third party. My point is they haven't given that to third party software companies like vMix, which you would think vMix is by far, I think, the standard when it comes to video switching over NDI, but kind of software-based video switching in general. If you're not using a TriCaster, you're likely looking at something like vMix. You know, the other one, what's it? Potential spam. Wirecast. That's the other option that people seem to like. I used Wirecast briefly for about 8 months. It was okay. It's an interesting tool. The key is to pick your poison and go with it and really invest and learn how to use it. Anyway, so HX is not something that can be generated necessarily by third-party software. They only do full NDI out. And so that changes your network requirements. If, for example, you're going to send your vMix stream over to your secondary machine and use it as a confidence monitor. Now, inside Studio Monitor, I can look at low bandwidth versions, the proxy, and, you know, lower the requirements for my, let's actually do that, lower my network requirements for watching this stream. So video, it's already set to low bandwidth. So I'm already looking at that, which means that it's like a fraction of what the full NDI stream is. And quite frankly, it's only for position. I don't really care what this stream looks like as long as I can see it. It doesn't need to be high quality or anything like that, but that lightens the load of my network if I'm just using it for a confidence monitor, and I don't need the full output for that. So with that being said, all of that, okay, as the preface to this conversation, we haven't really had a networking tool that will stress the network. Now, BirdDog, a long time ago, came out with a program called BirdDog Dino. And Dino was and is a free piece of software, which is an interesting tool. You can install it, you can tell it to do multiple streams and make it generate streams on your network. You can view, have incoming connections, multiples if you want. You can test whether or not a stream is coming in and not dropping any frames. All cool. It was a good tool when it came out because there was nothing available, so it was nice to have something. The issue was, though, that we weren't really too sure what we were looking at. Like when it would give you the little graph and it would show you what was going on, it was like, well, I don't quite understand. Some people would look at that graph and say, look, there's like the lines are going up and down around 60 frames. That must mean that it's not, it should be a flat line. It should be smooth. And it's like, well, yeah, kind of. And then there were other people that were saying, no, that it's supposed to look that way. And there was never really a open, hey, this is what a clean stream should look like. Partially because if you say, here's what the benchmark is, people are going to show you that theirs is not living up to the benchmark, and then you're going to generate more work. And so it was good, but it wasn't great because you ended up having somebody tell you that you were dropping frames. A great example of this is vMix. vMix has an analytical tool inside that tells you if you're dropping frames or not. Well, With HX, all the cameras would sit at 0. With full NDI, it would show drop frames, but you weren't dropping any frames. And so when I asked my guys about this, when I asked other people in the field who were doing full NDI through vMix, they would say, well, you have to understand, like, full NDI is a lot more data, and vMix, we're not really too sure how vMix is interpreting this information. So if it's showing drop frames, but you're not seeing drop frames, is it really dropping frames? You know, it's hard to see that you've dropped 1 out of 60 in one frame. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to detect all of that. So with the naked eye, because our eyes are not that good. And so you rely on a tool to tell you whether or not you're dropping frames. Then if you see that you're dropping frames, then you go to the source and they say, well, you're not really dropping frames. Well, what is it? Like, how are you supposed to know? So that was all very confusing. Well, a few years later, over at, I believe it was IBC is when this was announced, they announced that there would be a new tool called NDI Network Manager. And NDI Network Manager is what you think it is. It is a way for you to manage multiple NDI networks in remote locations, and it is a way for you to run tests for as long as you want between nodes. So as I understand it, and you can check out the office hours, there's like an hour-long presentation on this if you really want to know all the bells and whistles from the guy who's kind of the head designer of it. But basically, it's a monthly subscription that you use. You get, I think, 25 agents is what they call them, and you get the backbone software for it. Now, you can host it locally or you can host it in the cloud, which is really cool, because that basically means it never turns off if you don't want it to. However, it does behave just like NDI networks do. And so you would, NDI nodes. And so you wouldn't necessarily run this while your show is going on. But if you are an integrator, and this is where I think this product shines, and we'll get into it a little bit here. As a networking guy, I'm very excited about this. If you are into integrating networks that you're using NDI to achieve that goal, something like this might be very beneficial for you. So $15 a month, you know, you're going to be looking at, you're almost close to $200 a year, but it gives you 25 agents, and those agents can be installed on Windows, Mac, or Linux, so Raspberry Pi, and you're able to run those nodes on a network. You can then do testing between nodes on the network, or a node and your software up in the cloud, or nodes between each other across the cloud. So it's an amazing tool if you're trying to figure out, hey, can this network do it? What you do is you go into your install, you log in all your NDI stuff, and maybe you're doing this before you even deploy it. You set it up in the configuration that it's going to be, you know, with the cables that you're going to use, and then you install your nodes on different places in the network. So let's say we have network cabinets in 3 different places around an arena, and then we have a network rack inside of a, you know, video switching production suite or something like that. So we would install one node on each of those places, and then one node inside the actual network cabinet in the video switching production suite. And then we run latency tests between those nodes for as long as you want. And what the dashboard does in this instance is it remembers all of the history. So you can set it up when you're done one afternoon and you start running the node tests, and you go home, and then you come back in the morning, or you come back the next afternoon, 24 hours later, and you turn off the test. And then you can go through and you can see when there was ever an issue on that network and what time it was, between which nodes it had issues. What it does is it actually generates a NDI signal and sends it, and then records all of the data, all of the packets that go through it, records whether or not it was sent correctly. This sort of testing is genius. Now, I don't know what type of NDI source they're sending. As I said earlier, they haven't released the HX SDK for public use. And so I suspect this is built on the NDI SDK for full NDI, which would be interesting because that would be far more network requirement than you would ever need for an HX camera. And with the introduction of HX3, I don't know why you would ever use a full NDI camera. There is a famous video on, or there was, I don't know if it's still around, of, was it Anthony Barocas? My buddy Anthony Barocas over at StreamTech, who did a comparison between a full NDI stream and an HX3 stream, and the HX3 was slightly faster, as I recall. So again, I asked then, like, because full NDI, and granted, there was really only one company doing it, has been officially kind of orphaned by, Bird Dog, and I don't see any of the X series, which is that, does the X stand for HX? I don't see the X series necessarily leaning into the full NDI protocol. Why would we ever stress test for full NDI? Matter of fact, if that's the benchmark, stress test with full NDI, and then you know your HX network is rock solid, right? Because it's a lot less data. So I am always curious about some of this. Now we'll still talk about this NDI network. I just want to move the chat over here so I'm not missing out anything. Dyno, just like NDI analysis, was just a speed test tool. It really wasn't analytics. Unfortunately, it claimed a little bit to give you some analytics, and you were able to export those analytics and send them to us, and we could have interpreted those. It just only, the thing about this, the thing about Dyno, much like NDI analysis, including telemetrics in the NDI protocol would be ideal, like SNMP, but for video. HX3 is all iframes, so no need to wait for a keyframe to begin showing video, which is saving time. Agreed. So the thing about Dyno was that it ran for a specified amount of time. You get like 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes or whatever it was, but I forget what the cap was. But you could run that test for an X amount of time. The issue with it, I found, was you couldn't run it indefinitely, and it was really hard to interpret what the results were. Like, it wasn't crystal clear. And the claim to fame here with this new piece of software is that you will be able to easily understand what the information is, like what it's actually telling you. And so there'll be a dashboard. If I click on start here, there'll be a dashboard, and it will tell you, what it is that, and one of the other announcements that the guy made is that it's modular. So it will come out with all the base functions, but then if your network has other things, for example, they're hoping in the future to integrate Dante, which he said really wouldn't be that hard because Dante's a pretty simple protocol, but hoping to integrate the same type of tool. And so it's going to turn into from NDI Network Manager to AV Network Manager, so that there are other protocols that would be integrated, and you can buy modules that would end up being your suite of tools. It starts you out with X amount of nodes. I think it's 25 agents, 25 licenses for agents in the dashboard. But then you can buy additional ones as well. So that's really handy. The website is AV Sono. Let me look here. Okay, so NDI Network Manager, first of its kind, which I agree. There's nothing else out there that really is going to do what this does. Audio converters. I like the fact that this can be installed in the cloud, and that the cloud, you can just basically then log in anywhere you want and check it out. So, meaning that if you're on a job site for one customer in Colorado, and a job site calls you up in Pennsylvania and says, hey, we think we've got an issue, you can remote in and run a test and actually see what's going on, all from, you just turn it on from your from your online service with Amazon. That's really cool. I mean, that's really well thought out, and the dashboard's a little blurry, and if I click on this, it just takes me to that site we just saw. But I'm sure the video will tell us something. So yeah, analytics, it'll actually like give you all this data, show you real-time metrics from your NDI sources. That's pretty cool. I mean, this is the sort of tool that I think doesn't actually come out when the protocol is launched. You have to wait a little while to get to this phase. But now that NDI is taken fairly seriously, although I don't know if it is or isn't, because like I'm on the outside now, right? I don't work for a company that produces NDI stuff. And man, I have a lot of friends in the industry, right? I know a lot of people. There is not much chatter going on in the industry about NDI. And it's a little concerning to me because it's like when you work in it and you live that life, that's basically all you talk about all the time. But when I'm on the outside, like I don't hear very much about what's next at NDI. Like when NDI 6 came out, it was a nothing burger. Like there was very little to get excited about because there just wasn't much by way of information. And it was very strange to me. Go Web, I was just thinking of you. How's it going, man? It's good to see you too. I am doing well. Thank you. Hopefully you and your daughter Sanaya are also doing well. Always a pleasure. I was just thinking of you because I went on the Bird Dog John YouTube page and I was watching a video that I did on Companion and you were in the chat and I was like, oh man, I haven't heard from GoWeb in a while. So I'm glad to see that you're here. Unless you're running the software on the same PC as vMix, you may not even see the problem. But if you do, it could be very well be the soft. Sorry, your comment went off the screen here. I got to jump over to this one. Wherever might this one. Here we go. Very well. It could very well be the software itself or the extra bandwidth that the software is using. NDI is kind of quite quiet for a while. There used to be NDI tool updates all the time, but now I'm hearing nothing. I know. It is a little bit strange. So again, as I understand it from the outside, VizRT shut down NewTek and merged. We're going to merge NewTek with NDI and VizRT, meaning we're going to mothball the company name. I don't know. It's basically turned NDI into a licensing company. And all of their products are what, they're not developing any anymore or something like that, which is so brutal. Because NewTek was a pretty cool, pretty great company, and they had some guys that were innovating. But there was a philosophy, from what I've heard, that went through the leadership of NewTek that thought, no, we should just be licensing the thing and let everybody else create something. And I knew some of the guys on the creative side, and they were all let go. So that appears to be the future of at least the NDI, the godfather of NDI. There is Dr. NDI, which is the dude that shows up at the trade shows in a lab coat. He is the main architect for the updates that are coming, but I can't imagine he has the same sort of momentum that he ever did when NewTek was around and Dr. Cross was around. It just seems like the wind is out of their sails, and it concerns me a little bit because there's a lot of people in the NDI world. I think the NDI protocol is great. I mean, it's amazing. I wish they would package it better. And I think BirdDog, for example, dabbled in that a little bit when they made a deal with Netgear to sell cameras with Netgear switches, like a complete package. I don't know how that did with sales. I never found out. But that's kind of what you need to do. If you're going to sell it as a plug-and-play item, then you need to sell it with even go to the length of pre-programming the switches to function as you want them to. And then like have them go to somebody who knows networking. They say, this is our configuration. And then you tell them, okay, this is what you require on the computer, a dual network card. And then we'll set it up for you so that it works every time. And then it always works. And then when you get the package, go ahead and plug it in. Here's a diagram how to plug it in, and we'll remote in and show you how to use it. That's what really needs to happen if you're going to sell it as a plug and play product. If you're not going to help customers plug and play, then you need to stop saying that it's plug and play. So turning to the Audinate model, which Audinate already dominated and basically owns. Yeah, essentially, I think that's where they took their playbook from, was like, we don't need to create, although, you know, the AVIO units are owned by Dante, and that's an umbrella company under Audinate. So I don't know why you wouldn't continue to make products. Maybe it was just too expensive and it wasn't worth it. But is that NDI bubble had burst, costs involved, and reluctant to change is maybe the major reason. NDI is an ecosystem in itself, and to adapt to it is a challenge. That is very well spoken. I agree. If you're going to, here's the thing: is I think NDI just has like a problem marketing itself. Anytime you try and get people to change the way that they are doing business, you have to really sell it as a complete, easy to move over, way better than you had before protocol. And I do believe that about NDI. The problem is like, now that I'm out of that game and I'm doing video stuff, it's all SDI. Like it is. And right today, I don't need to send my video signals around the world. And that's what NDI is good for, is for getting it off of your network and into a cloud or to a different location. Now, if we do remote stuff, absolutely we might have a need to transport packets across the internet to a centralized location and then convert that to SDI and then bring that into our video switching product. Absolutely. But do I need to do that right now? No. And how many big installations need to send products around the world? Like, I think broadcast might, but I don't think everybody needs to. And you kind of need to sell a product where everybody needs to do it. And so that's the NDI conundrum, is it is a better protocol than most anything else out there for getting packets across a network. And remember, networks can be global. It's great for that. Who needs to do that? That's the question, is like, do you really need to have a centralized switching location in multiple places around the world? Again, we might get I might get there. I've worked for a place that might eventually get to that. But I don't need that now. And I certainly don't have the budget to bankroll the sort of money that it's going to take to do something like that. That's not in the budget. So I definitely see the benefits. NDI's problem is really they need to get it to where, hey, we can convert all your SDI cameras to NDI, and we can add network switches to your network so that your recording studios can happen anywhere in your building now. It's not about a matter of proximity. Like if I was building a recording studio, it would all be Cat 6. It would all be networked and probably feeding into a couple of 4250s that are, trunked together with a fiber. But I'm not building it new right now. And so, and quite honestly, the quality that you get for SDI at the price that it costs. Now, when I was in the industry, one of the things was, well, SDI is really expensive. Well, it is. The problem with SDI, though, in that conversation is if I pay the premium now, I will never have to pay the premium later. Like if I pay for quality Belden cables and I run home runs back to my video switcher, I will never need to touch those again. They will never fail me because there's no moving parts. It's just a copper line. Nothing is going to be a problem with those. And so, and it's hard to compete against that because computers burn out. Moving motors burn out. So if I buy PTZ cameras, if I buy video switches, if I buy network switches, I'm going to have to replace those in a few years. Like that's going to be a part of the issue. And manufacturers, not any particular manufacturer, is really going to have to answer that problem when it comes to all these PTZ cameras. Is in 2 years, are you even going to support it? If you bought a P200 in the year 2021 during the pandemic, they don't make those anymore. They're onto something else. And that's manufacturing. That's not Bird Dog's problem. That's manufacturing. That's the way that works. Products go in and out of availability based on what products are available in the market or what companies you have manufacturing your products. Like, that's just how that goes. Now, big companies like Apple, they're going to build iPhones and they're going to have parts for days. Smaller companies that are just trying to do a niche market thing, they're not going to have parts for days. That's just the nature of things. They're not as big as those big manufacturers that you trust. Samsung, Apple, Sony, JVC, they're all massive companies. And so they're going to have parts for a really long time. Whereas smaller companies, they're going to be trying to they're going to bank on being innovative and having the best product features that gives them the edge over, the generic ones out of the big companies. The problem is NDI's value proposition is that as a cables replacement and as an ecosystem, SDI cables weren't that sexy either. Agreed. And here's the thing is I can't get over the reliability of SDI versus NDI's flexibility and function. So that's the thing is if I go to a new install and I say, do you want this to just every time you walk in, you turn it on and nothing's different, nothing changes, no updates needed, it just always functions, you can operate in a bubble for the next 5 years? Versus, do you want all these cool features, but we're going to need to do some firmware updates every 6 months, and we may run into some issues with firmware incompatibilities, NDI 4, 5, 6, yada, yada, yada. Like there'll be some upkeep here, but you'll be able to view this signal anywhere that your network goes. And that gives you the flexibility to do things, everywhere in the world. I don't know. If I had the ability to spend $10,000 and get a lot more video equipment that's boring versus less video equipment that's got some really cool features but might be kind of hard to manage, that's a hard sell. That's hard for me to really decide on. I know, for example, there are people in the industry that scoff at anyone who uses a Blackmagic product because Blackmagic was prosumer, if at that. It was just entry-level consumer stuff. Well, times have changed. And honestly, I think production studios that laugh at people that are using products like Blackmagic are kind of stuck in the 90s. Like, I don't need $600,000 in video equipment to pull this off. I need maybe 10 grand, or less. And it does the same thing to the average viewer who's used to watching all of their content on literally this device. They're not going to notice the difference if you're using a Red camera or you're using, a 6K Blackmagic or you're using a DSLR. Now you're going to notice this one because it's only 720. But a lot of people are going to watch your video and then they're going to swipe and they're going to go to the next one. They're not going to sit there and be like, wow, this is amazing on my cell phone. So, it's hard to advocate for NDI because if it was just as rock solid, stable, easy to use, out of the box, here's what you do. We tried to do some of that when I was there. Like, here's how you set up your 4250. Here, watch these 5 videos and you'll be up and running. They're each, 10 minutes? You'll be completely ready to go if you follow along, and pause my video if you want. So I'd implemented NDI partially, if not as a whole, and loving the fusion of SDI and NDI. I think I will integrate NDI when we get to multi-site with the job that I'm doing. When we get there, then I'll probably look at NDI as a way to transport video across the cloud. And this one's for Jeremy. Today's show was brought to you not brought to you by Ember Mugs. Keep your coffee hot and your creamer curdled. good stuff. I just updated the app for that. Speaking of technology, and yeah, it's good stuff. Although the battery dies quickly on that. I could actually check that right now because I have the new app. Ember, what I was looking for was Companion, I think, has an Ember app. I could be wrong. All right, so we're loading. Oh, someone was detected at my front door. All right, so is my Bluetooth on? It is. Oh, no. Your drink has reached its preferred temperature. Yeah, it's been off the cradle for about an hour, and the battery is 50% drained. So yikes, that's draining quickly, and it's not heating the coffee; it's just maintaining it. So the battery in that one might be going. Now, I've had it for several years, so I'm not mad. All right, so all that to say, the use case for NDI is tricky, and if we could create environments that were a little bit more robust, where you could guarantee results on a more consistent level, especially from third parties. All right, so someone else telling the customer that their network is good is better than manufacturers saying, it's just plug and play. Just plug it into any network. I don't see why that link switch wouldn't work. It's far better to have a third party make a product like this AV Sono Network Manager. This is far better for the industry. And to let them tell you, we expect NDI to work just fine on this network. You know, no drops, no frame drops, everything's fine. The pathways from, point A to point B are clear, and you shouldn't have any issues. Then you can guarantee that NDI is going to be as robust as, it's going to be as good as or better than SDI, because SDI is very consistent. You're not going to drop frames on an SDI connection. So it's about making sure all the packets are here. Broadcast went the way of SRT, which is free, built in to just as many or the same amount of products as NDI. I've used Blackmagic cameras on an internationally broadcast television. Confirmed. Well, there you go. Blackmagic is even in the pro space, if those people are considered pro in your eyes. Yeah, this is the sort of conversation. It's like people are going to use the easiest, or not the easiest. People are going to find something in their price point that will deliver the highest results, which I also think that manufacturers get wrong. Again, nobody in particular, but I'm thinking, you think people want to shell out $3,000 for a PTZ camera? I don't think so. And the 4K ones that came out a while ago, and I don't think they want to spend that sort of money on a camera that they may not even have a network that's able to run it. We had theaters in Europe that bought several P4Ks and did not have the backbone to handle it. And what do you tell the customer? Do you refund their money? It's really not the camera's fault. But did you tell them that they're going to need to have, X, Y, and Z on the network in order to make this work? Like, it's just a real dicey problem. If you could pre-package it and say, you can buy the cameras individually, or you can buy this package of, for every 3 cameras, you get a switch, and we will pre-configure them for you so that when you get them, they're ready to rock and roll. But here's how your network should be configured for this to work. Your production computer needs to have a dual network card so that you can be on your NDI network, which is just like this setup is, and you can be on your internet to send it out to the network. That's what this rig is, and it works very well. So I'm glad, after all these years of tooting that horn, that indeed is the case. So I'm pretty excited about NDI Network Manager. I'm excited that somebody's making it, that it's a third party, that they've been working closely with VizRT and NDI to make sure that it is, interpreting NDI signals correctly, and that it, as you bring them across, that definitely gives you valuable data, and that you can run these nodes for indefinite periods of time. So check it out, guys. NDI Network Manager. I'm hoping to I know I can get a free trial here, so I might end up doing that, and that you can install it on a Raspberry Pi, which I have one of those sitting here too. So we'll give that a go. And this is an older one, but it will do just fine. It will spit out what I need on the network. It has a network port, which is important. And yeah, maybe we'll give that a go and see how it works. But it'd be really good if that is indeed how easy it is to. Now, the other thing is that you can run these on multiple networks and link them all up. And so when you, especially if it's hosted in the cloud, you can monitor multiple networks all at once, which is then a service option that you integrators can give people is, hey, we'll have the ability to monitor your NDI network, and we'll do a weekly check, monthly check, whatever you agree upon to then sell the customer as a service. So that's cool. That's really neat that that's an option. I strongly suggest that you charge more than $15 a month for that service, because that's what it will cost you just to have this software alone. So make some money, do your thing, and it's good news for the industry. Now, one last thing I've been meaning to do since September is my kids and my wife bought me kettle chips, but they are jalapeno flavored. And so I want to partake in this. I haven't opened these yet, so here we go. Whew. And as we all know, what goes well with your mouth on fire but hot coffee? So, yeah, here we go. I'll let you know. These are Kettle brand air-fried, kettle-cooked, air-finished jalapeno chips, which are 30% less fat, meaning you can eat 30% more. These are they're almost like salt and vinegar and dill pickle chips with like a slight afterburn. But they're not hot, that's for sure. Good news, everyone. I also think, let me check, but those chips are good though. All right, let me look. If somebody was at my front door moments ago, then that might mean that there is ramen sitting downstairs at my front door. Okay, let me look at my camera. All right, I'll play back and see if somebody walked up to the front door. Definitely looks like somebody walked up to the front door. Come on. What on earth? It's a guy with a measuring tape. That's very strange. It's probably the construction crew next door. Yeah, a guy with a measuring tape absolutely just walked up to my front door. Have you forgotten how to build the house that you're building next door? Because that's a thing. That's weird. All right, well, I got spicy ramen on its way. It's supposed to be delivered today. So I will keep you posted as to how that goes. And arriving today, my wife actually requested it, which is wild. But we got 3 types coming. Quattro cheese. We've got carbonara and corn flavored. And I like the corn flavor. These are 3 that I've all liked. And she's tried the carbonara, so we're going to give her the corn one next. They're all spicy. Not 2 times spicy. But they're all spicy. So looking forward to that. I might have a very early lunch on camera one of these weeks. They'll all be here by the end of the month. So looking forward to that. I need to get a bumper for Snacks on Stream because I don't have one yet, and it's been a long time since we've done that. So I should lift the one from my bird dog days, but I'll have to maybe just make something new. Okay, it is 11 o'clock here Central Time, so hopefully you guys are doing well. Thank you so much for coming by today and having a chat. I'm going to get back to work because we got lots of things to do before the weekend gets here. But be well, take care of yourselves. Always a pleasure to see you, and we will plan on hanging out again this time next week. I will post something as to what it is that we'll review, and if I ever get my hands on a trial of the NDI Network Manager stuff, we will definitely be walking through that with a hands-on experiment. So take care of yourselves out there. Hopefully you're doing well, and we will see you all next week. Yeah, that's the plan. So be well, guys. Appreciate you. Bye.